What's good, folks? Welcome to a
Yes.
playoff edition, of the Cover One Film Room, the show that gives you the hows and the whys behind both the good and the bad of the Buffalo Bills and sometimes their opponents, like you're going to get in
Ooh,
this
baby.
episode. Ooh, baby is right. I'm Anthony Prohaska, joined as always by Erik Turner. Here we are in the film room. If you didn't know, the Bills are in the playoffs. They face the Denver Broncos. This week, the Bills claim the 2 seed. The Broncos claim the 7 seed. Here we go. Survive in advance, single elimination, game of inches, all the proverbials, all the stuff. It is that time of year. Very excited, very pumped. Erik, how you feeling? How's it going? What's up?
It's a playoffs, baby. Let's go.
Oh,
I'm ready. I'm really ready. And I'm excited because tonight we're doing something a little different. We get to scout the opponent, which is something that we don't get to do often in the film room because we are usually recapping. But we couldn't waste any more time on the week 18 game. We wanted to move forward immediately. What's up, Greg?
Yes.
And so we have a in-depth show. Like I said, something that we don't get to do often, but usually it is that first round that we do get to do it. Last few years, we've had some fun with it, and we appreciate everyone joining us. So we are going to cover everything, and we're going to cover the run and pass games of the Broncos offense, the run and pass games of the Broncos defense. We're going to talk about Bill's strategy. We're going to talk about tendencies, advanced stats. We're going to have film. We have pre-recorded segments so that we don't go 2.5 hours and run into Greg and Aaron later on this evening. So you guys, I hope you have your beverages, as I always say. I hope that you have a comfortable seat because we are going to dive in really deep with some film and some advanced stats tonight to preview Bills Broncos.
We are. We got a super chat and we have to bring it up. And I don't know who this is to, but Greg says, in your day, did they call it a snatch trap or just playing football?
Anthony?
Yeah, in my day, yeah, I'm ready to throw myself through the window. In my day, they called it just playing football. Yeah, no, it's still I'm right back in there. Like that is one of like very few things that I'm just like, well done. Thank you very much for the super chat, Greg. And
thanks, Greg.
Kicking this off nice. This is nice. And it's so funny too, because like it's such a prominent thing for the Bills now, like Dawkins and Brown, like in league wide, but especially for them too.
It's a cornerstone trademark of the offensive line right now, with Brown and Dawkins doing it frequently.
Yeah, like good times. Appreciate you, Greg. Hey, Carl, appreciate you saying happy wild card week, guys. Yes, we are diving into all the snatch traps, the playing footballs, all that kind of stuff in this episode to, dive into the Broncos side a little bit, frame this. Every time we do this, and I think we've done it, we can count on one hand how many times we've done it, usually for the playoffs, like you said. I'm always going to go back to the very first time we did it was the Chiefs game. And the Bills lost because they haven't beaten them in the playoffs. But I was so mad because it was the Rush 3 stuff. And we pointed out specific things that like legitimately would have helped. And the Bills didn't, and they lost. And then the Bengals did them the next week. And I was just like, oh, I was so mad. I was so fuming. But these are episodes I really enjoy. It's another level that we get to dive into in the film room and kind of do the opponent scout and tie it into what we know of the Bills, put it all together. It's nice that the Bills also gave us this opportunity a little bit by, no disrespect to the Patriots, kind of having a bye in week 18.
It's true.
Yeah. So that way we got to fully, focus more on this upcoming opponent in this matchup. Erik, let's start on the offensive side of the ball for the Denver Broncos, a unit that some unimpressive metrics in some ways, led by a well-versed head coach, especially on the offensive side of the ball, a rookie quarterback who I mentioned this last night. I made jokes when the Broncos drafted Bo Nix. Like I just wasn't expecting it, especially in the first round. Like I remember somebody in their war room had like a shocked look on his face, and I remember screenshotting it to be like, oh, even this guy's surprised. But here we go. Like Bo Nix, Payton leaning into him a little bit. They remake the wide receiver room. They've got some speed. They've got some juice. They've got Courtland Sutton. They've got this myriad of running backs. They've got a very nasty offensive line that you have to strap in for when you go against, especially Quinn Miners, who plays like a King Kong Godzilla type of mix there. A really interesting unit from an individual standpoint, but also when we really start to dive into it, who they are schematically, how everything ties together, how Sean Payton has insulated Bo Nix a bit. I enjoyed I'd watch some Broncos games throughout the year, much more their defense than I did the offense. But in getting ready for this week, I found myself enjoying more of the schematics of this offense that I thought I would initially coming into this game.
Yeah, and it does start with Sean Payton and his staff. They've curated an offense that obviously fits Bo Nix's, his character, his personality, but also what he can do on the field. And it's that marriage of the zone. It's the run game, especially zone, which we're going to talk about tonight. That wide zone, mid zone run tied with the bootleg and play action stuff, which the Broncos do a bunch of. So it's that marriage between the run and the pass game and how they look so similar. But their run game overall, when you look at the numbers, they should be better. They should be better than they are. They're 13th in attempts, 16th in yards. They're averaging 4.1 yards per rush. That's 21st overall. 12 touchdowns. That's 23rd. But their offensive line, as you said, is the strength of the offense, whether we're talking even in the run game and especially the pass game, which we'll get to later. But the run game, I mean, they're 8th overall in yards before contact per rush. That's at 1.62 yards. That's 8th overall. So there's something lacking there, and you'll see some of that stuff on film. But as I said, I think their offensive line is a strength, whether you're talking run or pass game. And I think the running backs they hit the holes in some of these zone runs that you're going to see here in a few minutes with the film. But they could be doing a lot more with this entire run game, not just that wide zone run, those mid zone runs, because again, that offensive line is so good.
Yeah, I still kind of think this a little bit. I thought they overpaid a bit for McGlinchey, bit for Ben Powers, but when you look at it paired together as a whole, especially, the two guards and the two tackles, Bowles is extremely good. Powers has been solid. Miners has just been I remember Miners from last year in that game between Bills Broncos where him and Linval Joseph were battling, and he was like chucking Bernard and Dodson out of the club if he got to the second level.
Yes,
and then McGlinchey, even if they overpaid for McGlinchey a little bit, he's been a solidifying force at right tackle. And yeah, the nastiness, the physicality, they're double teams. They're trying to displace you through the end zone. McGlinchey's got a really nice gallop technique and just burying like 3 techs. And I was, I guess, not surprised because, you kind of see it and sense it in the film a little bit. But yeah, tying into that run game a little bit, 24th in rushing DVOA, 25th in EPA per attempt for running back runs, 24th in EPA per attempt for running back runs on early downs, 18th in success rate for running back runs, 19th in success rate for running back runs on early downs. There is just that disconnect a little bit. Yeah. And I really think if their run game was more successful, how Payton already, like you talked about, marries that run and pass game, man, if they had some semblance of a, if they left less meat on the bone with the run game, man, like I just feel like what this offense could potentially be going forward if they were able to get more of that, given what they do schematically and tying it together with the pass.
Right. And so the film that we're going to show here in a minute, it's going to focus on that wide zone run, the outside zone run. I talk about it in the film about being a throwback to John Elway, Terrell Davis, wide zone runs. They're actually not meant to get to perimeter. They're supposed to cut back up inside. They run mid zone, which if you're in the film room with us every week, we've broken down, mid zone several times this year. But so we're asking ourselves, who are they as a run team overall throughout the year? What concepts are they leading with? As I said, outside zone, 133 attempts this year, 578 yards, 4.3 a rush. Their second most run concept is man concept. So think duo, think ISO or lead plays like that. 80 attempts, 274 yards, 3.4 per rush. Again, that's their second most run type of concept. And their third is a lead play, usually with, a fullback or a tight end playing that H-back role. 77 attempts, 299 yards, 3.9 per rush. So again, these numbers aren't inspiring. They're not popping, off the screen. And when you watch the film, it's not popping off the film. But you see the last 4 games, again, they kind of switch it up a little more. There's still heavy outside zone, 42 attempts. They're adding some of that split zone. So some of that, that flow across the formation, those sift blocks by tight ends, fullbacks, and sometimes wide receivers. They're still doing the lead with 17 attempts, and then they added in some more inside zone at 17 attempts at 3.9 a rush. So that's who they are from a run concept perspective. But like I said, at the top, they should be better. And overall, you're going to see when we talk about the run game and the pass game, you watch their film on offense, you're going to see that it just gels really well and how it's going to make things difficult for the Bills pre to post snap. Because again, a lot of these plays, Anthony, right? They look very similar, and it's a very similar scheme and philosophy that we've seen from the Sean McVays, the Kyle Shanahans, as you'll see in some of this film. So real quick, let's get to this short breakdown on the Broncos run offense here. Over the last 4 games, the Broncos offense is ranked 7th. The Bills have their hands full with the Broncos offense on Sunday. Sean Payton has curated an offense that suits the personnel he has in place. The run and pass game mesh very well and are the type of Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay style of offense that have given the Bills defense fits at times because of how well the run and pass games are married. The Broncos primarily are an outside zone run team. They have run the concept 133 times for 4.3 yards per rush, and their offensive line blocks it up very well. The Broncos average 2.02 yards before contact per rush when running this play and have ripped off a 9.5% explosive play rate over the last 4 games. It's a throwback to the John Elway and Terrell Davis days where they ran wide zone runs looking for cutback lanes. They want to get the defense fast flowing horizontally down the line of scrimmage so that they can cut it back up inside for second level gains, but also to set up their play action boot game. Not only will this test the eye discipline and run gap integrity of the defense as a whole, but in my opinion, it will specifically test the Bills' interior defensive line. Their play will set the tone for this game. They will be up against 2 massive guards in Ben Powers, who's number 74, and Quinn Miners, who wears number 77. Here the Bengals align in an overfront with the 3 technique to the strength of the formation. The Broncos run zone weak. Powers torques the nose tackle to widen the hole for the running back, with Miners completely washing away the backside defensive tackle down the line of scrimmage, giving the running back a nice cutback lane up inside. In the same game, the Broncos used some eye candy prior to the snap to force the defense to have to adjust their structure as the ball is snapped. But also, they used some split flow post-snap to add in some misdirection. But it's still a zone run, this time mid-zone weak, which is generally categorized as an outside zone run by charting companies. On the snap, the Broncos run to the weak side bubble, so away from the 3 technique. But watch how Powers gets under the pads and turns the 3 technique defensive tackle, who will be Ed Oliver for the Bills. That makes the left tackle's job that much easier, but it also makes our running back's decision to cut it back behind those blocks easy as well. The timing exhibited by Powers and Miners on these zone runs are impressive. They do a great job of helping solidify the first level before scooping to the next level. This gets the Broncos' talented offensive linemen on linebackers, typically leaving the defensive backs for the tight ends. Here's another zone weak run with a cutback to the strength of the formation, which means the 3 technique defensive tackle is set to the strength of the formation. On this play, Miners feeds the nose tackle to the center, then climbs to the linebacker, with Powers immediately getting to the linebacker in space and covering him up so that the running back, Julian McLaughlin, can get to the 3rd level. The Bills have surrendered nearly 4 yards a carry against these sort of runs, and they have been tested recently by teams. The Bills settle in their nickel overfront, and on the snap, defensive tackle Jordan Phillips spikes into the A-gap, which then puts the onus on linebacker Balin Spector. He must beat the center to the B-gap, but unfortunately, he wasn't able to. When defensive tackles are bumped over a gap by offensive linemen or asked to exchange gaps, the linebackers, Terrell Bernard and Matt Milano, will need to make those defensive tackles right. Here, Daquan Jones gets fed into the backside A-gap on this zone run, but Bernard read it quickly by replacing him. But more importantly, staying out ahead of the backside guard who is hunting for Bernard. Will Miners or Powers be able to get to the Bills linebackers? The Bills defensive tackles aren't primarily tasked with occupying blockers to keep the linebackers clean, making this a strategic battle in the trenches. However, the team's 3 technique defensive tackles must consistently work across the face of the backside offensive lineman, as Powers and Miners will look to seal off the Bills' fast-flowing linebackers. If those 3 techniques can scrape down the line on zone runs while the linebackers trigger quickly to out-leverage Denver's talented guards, the Bills have a strong chance of forcing the Broncos' offense into a one-dimensional attack.
Your narration voice is so calming. I was like, like it's just like zoning out.
No, it's I like doing those, short segments just because you're able to flesh it out, a little easier, a little quicker, so that we can, talk about it more, and so that viewers can ask questions about it, because this is going to be a big thing. Again, outside zone, wide zone, mid zone runs are the type of plays that look like they're supposed to get outside, but they're actually meant to cut back up inside. And that means, again, Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver, you saw Jordan Phillips in there. Those guys are going to be incredibly important in this game, because as Carl says here, is that the Bills need to stay in their lanes and fill the gaps in their run defense, tackle. Yes, those zone blocks going from one side to the other, they're moving gaps. And so the defensive linemen and honestly the linebackers have only one gap. And if that gap's moving, they have to move in unison with those gaps, right, Anthony? And so there are going to be times where the tackles are going to get bumped out of their gap, or they're going to get reached. And now a linebacker has to, again, make him correct. And so that's why the relationship between a D tackle and linebacker is something we love talking about, because sometimes a linebacker just has to make that D tackle right. The D tackle may have lost, but the linebacker can replace him and make him right.
Yeah, you had a great point in that segment of, talking about the gap exchanges. And sometimes they're by design. We'll see, hey, you're aligned in the A, you're going to jump to the B. The linebacker's in the B, he's going to jump the A. Sometimes by design. Sometimes it just happens. You get bumped over a gap because the linemen kick you out, and then that linebacker still has the ability to make you right. I thought that was a great point, because it happens all the time. Sometimes it's by design, sometimes it's not. But that's what the offense is trying to do. They're trying to change. You use gap scheme runs to remove and add gaps. You can still do it on zone by displacing guys and then creating or forcing the gap exchange to happen. And then now the defense has to recognize it on the fly. And if they don't, you get hit for big runs. And, I thought you really nailed it with the outside zone run aspect. And like you've said multiple times, including in that video, how well it pairs with their play action game and just the marriage and everything. 12% design rollout rate, aka like boots, number 1 in the league. Also, 14% screen rate, which is 4th. They will just pair everything together of that wide zone and then use that to. I mean, we've talked about it for years with the Shanahan and McVay tree, how well that outside zone game pairs with the boot. Bo Nix is an athletic QB. You get him on the move. You scheme and design guys open. When it works, it really works. And against the Bills defense that has shown vulnerability, especially on the interior, and talking about defensive tackles being displaced vertically, horizontally, guys getting out of gaps, guys getting too far upfield. There is a legitimate recipe and blueprint naturally for how the Broncos already operate for giving the Bills defense a problem.
Yeah, you don't want those power interior offensive linemen to create that displacement on a Bills D line that is, as everyone knows, pretty much undersized when you're relative to the league. And so you don't want that displacement. And then when you start moving the gaps like that horizontally, there's a chance for guys to be out of their gaps, and that gap integrity is challenged. And you don't want minors and power scooping to that next level without any disruption or without any repercussions. If that guy's going to scoop to the next level, one of those guards quickly and not hang back and help the backside offensive lineman on these zone runs, well, then Ed Oliver has to get on his horse to get down the line of scrimmage to go make that tackle, like Carl said. That's incredibly important. You saw when those backup D tackles were in, Jordan Phillips and Austin Johnson against the Patriots, and they ran that to the strength. They ran that mid zone, that wide zone run. Yeah. You saw them stay front side because Jordan Phillips got sealed, but you also didn't see Austin Johnson scrape down line of scrimmage because he got sealed off. And then Cole Bishop got picked off at the second level. So it's just a domino effect. And it starts up front. As we say each and every week, it starts up front.
Yeah, 100%. It's having a game where the run game can still be a factor for an opponent is not ideal. We've been talking about it for a while on the show, how they've stopped the run with, run blitzes, numbers, bodies in the box, but also game script coming into play, and game script being a huge fan. I don't remember when. I think maybe after the Baltimore game is when I put game script enthusiast underneath like my tag here. And it's just, it continues to play a role for this Bills defense from the run standpoint. And that's where it starts. If Sean Payton gets his way, Bo Nix, I don't know, throws the ball like 17 times, 10 of them are probably play action. And then nice, from Adam. Yeah, it is a very big buzzword this year, especially when in relation to the Bills. But if Payton gets his way, Nix probably throws the ball 17 times, 10 of them are play action. You probably go 13 of 17. He gets to run the ball a ton, make life easy for Bo with some slide routes and some overs and just quick little dump offs to some tight end delays and leaks and all these pieces. And they can chew up clock. You keep the ball away from Josh Allen. You move the ball, so on and so forth. And that running game, that's good for the running game in and of itself in a vacuum. But then also how that ties into the passing game, which is another area, Erik, as we led off with talking about this offensive line, they are maulers. They are nasty in the run game. But how they function is a significant part, obviously, in the passing game. And then how that ties into Nix's play style, his athleticism. Again, there is, despite what the numbers say in a bunch of ways, like this offense does have a sound design and game plan that they implement each week.
Right. And I don't think it's going to take a lot of tools or assets or resources to slow down the run game of the Broncos. I agree. Try to get them one-dimensional and shut that run game down, whether you got to run those gap exchanges between the D linemen and the linebackers, maybe bring some nickel or safety run blitzes off the edge to, again, fill all those the gaps and shut that down so that it doesn't get going. Yep. Get Bo Nix in that drop back game. Very similar game plan to Jared Goff. And I know Goff went off.
Yeah.
But I just don't expect that from Bo Nix with what Sean and Babish has done.
He also went off after the Bills were up 35-14 and put them in that hole. Like and to your point, exactly, like put them in true drop back situations, no passing down in distances. I just don't, no disrespect to Bo Nix, I don't think Bo Nix is going to do what Goff does. Also, Sutton is sweet, but there is no Amon-Ra and Jameson Williams and Sam Laporta and this whole cavalcade of like weapons. Like that game script is going to significantly impact them much more than it even would the Lions.
So transitioning to the passing game of the Broncos, as we said, it starts up front. Their pass blocking is phenomenal. They're the top ranked when it comes to PFF's pass blocking efficiency metric at 91.4%. And overall, Nix hasn't been pressured all that much. He's been pressured 28% of the time. That's 6 overall. Obviously really good. And he's been sacked 24 times. So that's a decent number right there. He's been sacked 24 times. And 13 of those have been credited to Nix. So there are times where, he's not reading the coverage properly post snap, and he probably pulls it down and ends up scrambling or taking a sack at that moment. So 25.3% of the pressures that Nix has felt this year have been on him. It's the highest in the league. So again, there's something there when we're talking Bobby Babbitt, Sean McDermott at confusing and disguising the coverages to confuse Nix. There's something there that could lead to sacks, that could lead to pressures, that could lead to him holding on to the ball. And hopefully, as we'll get to in a few minutes, not scrambling, because he's actually pretty good at that too.
Yeah, he is athletic, and I believe he's 4th in EPA generated with throws on the run, which is nice, but he has one of the higher volumes, so you would expect those things to kind of go hand in hand a little bit. Some interesting numbers too, just with the passing game in terms of like sack rate. This ties into the Bills offense. Fewest sacks in the league for the Bills, lowest sack rate at 2.6%. The Broncos have the second lowest sack rate at 4%. And some of that is tied to Nix's athleticism. But again, how they isolate him, how they operate within that passing game, how it ties into the run, what they do. And it's someone put I forgive me because I didn't start. Somebody earlier said when we were talking about this, kind of put so another Rams game, where the ball comes out quick or there's play action and we don't get pressure. Not necessarily, but also kind of like the idea of that. I see it and I understand it, why it would be in fans' heads, given how we're talking about this offense, how the presentation comes out, and then just overall how they operate within structure in terms of, again, insulating Nix, but then also how his athleticism plays into that as well.
Yeah, and I will say that it's a little different from the fact that from the perspective that they run a bunch of play action too. And so when you run play action, you're holding onto the ball longer. So you're going to see the average snap to it. Okay, they run play action 28.8% of the time. And that's what, top 10 in the league.
Yeah, I would say I had him as the ninth highest play action rate. Also 17th in EPA per play action pass, in case anyone.
Right. And so when you're running that much play action, you're holding on to the ball a bunch. So when you look at his, snap to attempt or snap to throw numbers, they're going to be right around average snap to attempt 2.7 seconds. So it's on the higher end, not the highest end. Josh is right at 2.7 snap to attempt, not even snap to throw or average throw time. So he's going to hold on to the ball a little bit, but he's actually very smart. He's very decisive. He's not scared to hit those check downs really quickly. He doesn't take many negative plays. And again, sometimes his legs bail him out a little bit. But he is annoyingly athletic, annoyingly effective as a scrambler, or again, on those bootlegs, that having that run option to just, tuck it and run. He's annoying in that regard. And so I was looking at some of his scrambles, and these are just scrambles and what direction he likes to scramble, or what direction he is more effective as a scrambler. And it's very similar as far as scrambles to left or the right. It's like 20 and 19 right to left. But when he rushes to his left, he gets 8.3 yards per scramble. When he rushes to his right, it's 4.1 yards. For what reason? I couldn't tell you. But it seems like there are times he gets to the top of his drop, and the Bulls, who's a good tackle and very athletic, he runs the rushers wide. And what Nix does is he steps up, and eventually he's like, oh, there's an outlet, I'm gone. And so you're going to see some scrambles in the film if you go back and watch it, and some probably from this weekend when AJ Epinesa is trying to get, up the field really quick, and he runs by the spot of the quarterback. Nix is probably going to take off. Again, 8.3 yards to his left, 4.1 yards to his right as a scrambler.
Yeah, and tying into that athleticism, I feel like and this is typical. I feel like Bronco fans overestimate his athleticism, but then casual fans don't give him enough credit for it.
Yeah.
But he will. This is a quarterback who, I mean, all jokes aside, has played a lot of college football.
A lot.
Yeah, a lot.
And think about the conferences that he played in, the styles he played in. It's a very good Rolodex for him. It's a very good resume.
And that's what I was going to tie into. Like the way he was at Oregon, you saw the athleticism flash. What he was at Auburn was primarily like a zone read QB, like read the end, take off, like arguably like one of the best athletes on the field. That's who he was. And granted, that was when he started at Auburn. So approximately 17 years ago. However old he is now.
84 years ago.
It's been 84 years. But that athleticism is still in there. But that's how he started. He was this legitimate dual threat quarterback in the SEC, being effective as a dual threat quarterback in the SEC. Him going to Oregon, he kind of put that athleticism on the back burner a little bit and leaned more into this high completion percentage, good decision maker, accurate, push the ball when needing to. Granted, that Oregon offense took great advantage with their speed and college hashes and all the pieces that come with it. But that guy is still in there, and you see it from time to time. And I think in a game like this, where it's a playoff game, you're facing a defense that is good at taking the ball away and forcing your hand, I wouldn't be surprised if there is more of an emphasis on him tucking and running, not even just by design, but quick play action. Oh, that B gap opened up because Bowles rushed my man wide. Yep, I'll take it. I'll take the quick 6 yards and I'll slide. And now it's 2nd and 4. Or it was, 2nd and 5, and now it's a first down. Him using his legs to not necessarily generate these huge backbreaking moments, but kind of using them to keep the offense on schedule and play within himself, which may seem kind of counterintuitive.
Right. And here's a good question from Adam. Do we think that Bobby Babbage will be blitzing in the first half or introducing it in the second half? I can't comment on how they're going to approach it, whether they go the Belichick style where they attack, get them unsettled, the quarterback unsettled, and then kind of back off. I don't know if they'll take that approach, but when it comes to blitzing versus not blitzing Bo Nix, a lot of people are like, you just got to go after him. He's actually not that bad as when he is blitzed. He was blitzed this year 33.7% of the time. He's completing 61.3% of his passes for 1,364 yards, 6.9 yards per attempt, 11 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions when blitzed. So he actually has some decent answers outside of him just scrambling, because when you don't blitz him and when he's just under pressure, he's thrown 5 touchdowns and he's gotten intercepted 5 times. But more importantly, he takes off when not blitz. So 38 of his 50 scrambles this year actually came when there was a 4-man rush. Again, whatever scenario or configuration of 4 rushers, 38 of his 50 scrambles this year were actually when he wasn't blitzed, Anthony.
Yeah, I was going to say the majority, and again, different NFL to college, different. But given the game experience that he has, and then Payton coaching him, I was surprised in watching the tape at how much it seemed like coverages were giving him an issue, like late spins or just kind of muddying what we're showing here and disguising it a little bit. And again, he's 24, plenty of college experience, yada, yada, all jokes aside. Like, I guess I thought he'd be more process ready in that regard, but he's still a rookie. And for a Bills defense that loves to spin late, that, even if it is, Hamlin and Rapp and the athleticism isn't there for Hamlin like it is for Cole, like we talked about last week, they still will spin late. They'll show too high and run single. They'll run vice versa. They'll spin who's the post and who's the down safety. Like, I feel like that. Oh, we talk about it every week. That marriage of coverage and pass rush for the Bills, I think, really has an opportunity for the coverage doing a little bit more of the lifting when it comes to pressure, because you can make Bo hold on to the ball, or maybe not necessarily trust his eyes, or he's trying to figure out who's going where. And then Ed Oliver gets there, or Greg Rousseau gets there, or you take away that first initial designed schemed read like Cole Bishop did to Aaron Rodgers a couple weeks ago, and then the rush gets home.
Yeah, that complementary football is always important, especially when we're talking a designed offensive scheme by Sean Payton. And finally, when it comes to Nix, the passer, some of the other metrics we want to discuss before we jump into some of the film and show you some of what he can do on the field, outside of the pocket, on the run, on these bootlegs, was the fact that, he is a little undersized relative to the league. He is a little undersized, and that does come into play when we're talking passes being batted down, which we know the Bills defense for years gets schooled on this in pretty much every practice. And this year they only have 9 batted passes, but 2 of those were intercepted. Bo Nix leads the league in batted passes. He has 16 this year. And a lot of those come on these wide receiver screens. Some of the running backs going out to the flats or flaring out, and he's trying to get rid of it out to him. That gets blocked. But there are some that happen over the middle too. And I think there's some good opportunities here for the Bills defense to, if they can't get home, if the ball's coming out quick on these screens, on these swing routes to running backs, which Bo Nix loves targeting running backs. He targets running backs over 20%, 20.5%. That's 5th overall. These opportunities are going to be there for a Greg Rousseau to tip a bat a pass down, or get the interception for Jordan Phillips. Those opportunities are going to be there against Bo Nix.
And I think that's part of the reason too, right? Why he, in addition to kind of the offense, what Payton wants, but why you want to get him moving, why they are, towards the top of the league and being in the top of the league in terms of design rollouts. And even Bo Nix just being, where are my stats here? He has the 2nd most attempts on the year in terms of throws on the move. So they are trying to get him out of the pocket. They're trying to get him, out of those potential scenarios where his height could be an issue. And if we're talking about Greg Rousseau, you had the great idea of, note, I should say, of, the difference of him rolling left versus rolling right. If he's rolling right, you're probably rolling into Greg Rousseau, maybe. So what does that length look like? And trying to shrink the airspace, getting his hands up, or just, or getting down on him in general with that stride range and that radius. This height does tie into, again, why they like to move him. And also, as you have up on the screen there, why you see some outlet throws, wide receiver screens, that quick passing game. So it isn't an issue, in addition to just kind of alleviating potential pressure, giving him easy buttons. And just, again, some of the Sean Payton stuff for years, which was check downs and easy buttons and kind of forcing the defense's hand by making life easy for the QB.
All right, so that's a pretty in-depth breakdown on Bo Nix, but we're going to wrap it up with some film. Here's another segment on Bo Nix. Again, how he's tied into the offense, how Payton has some of those like guardrails so that he can't, go crazy as a rookie quarterback. There's some really good stuff on in this offense. Nix on the run, outside the pocket. He's very, very talented in that regard. So listen in. Over the last 4 games, the Broncos offense is ranked 7th in EPA per dropback, including 12 passing touchdowns, the 2nd most in the NFL in that span. Their quarterback, Bo Nix, is a decisive and smart player for his age. He takes care of the ball really well. But kudos to Sean Payton as well, because he has designed an offense that fits Nix. Payton uses a lot of play action for Nix to the tune of 19.9% over the last 4 games alone, which is the 5th highest over that span. And we all know the Bills have always struggled with play action because of their defensive philosophy. This season, the Bills have a 46.3% defensive pass success percentage, which is 24th in the NFL. They allow 7.6 yards per attempt on play action passes, which is the 7th highest in the league. The Broncos will look to exploit that this Sunday. Payton routinely gets Nix on the perimeter defenses with run action because he's actually a pretty good passer while on the run or outside of the pocket. This philosophy also makes reads a lot easier for the rookie QB because they are usually 3-level passing concepts that contain routes that attack all 3 levels of the defense, while giving the QB the ability to use his legs if there's no one open. The old ball coach is still one of the best play sequencers in the league as well. The run and pass game mesh and often look the same, but he also draws up several layers to plays in order to stay a step ahead of opposing defensive coordinators. The Broncos have 15 touchdowns off of play action, which is 3rd overall, thanks to their bootleg variations and ability to move the launch point for their quarterback. This can drive pass rushers crazy because they aren't able to just pin their ears back and attack the normal dropback depth, especially when you consider the run action. Whether off of run action or in the second stanza of plays, Nix is shown to be very adept at making plays outside the pocket. He's 6th overall in EPA per dropback, 2nd in passing yards, 2nd in touchdowns, and 2nd in 20-plus yard completions this year on passes outside of the pocket. He has that type of ability inside and outside of structure when talking about outside of the pocket. But he does it without turning the ball over. He does a fantastic job of that overall, seen in his 7.8% negative play percentage, which is 7th overall in the league. I expect the Bills to focus on making the Broncos offense one-dimensional, putting all of the responsibility on Nix. To do that, they must shut down the Broncos' run game, which will be led by their strong offensive line, because Nix doesn't take many sacks. He's 2nd overall in expected points added, thanks to sacks. And that's because Payton gets the ball out of his hand with RPOs and screens, but also because Nix isn't afraid to take the check down to his running backs. Over the last 4 games, he's targeted the running backs 25.6% of the time, which is the 2nd most over that span. He's very aware of where his running backs are when he needs a lifeline, especially when defenses are capping the Broncos down the field threats. He will take the profit quite frequently. Stopping the run will be the key to forcing the Broncos into 3rd and long situations. This will allow the Bills to disguise their coverages and disrupt Denver's preferred game plan, controlling possession to keep Josh Allen off the field. Yeah, I mean that's really everyone's game plan against against him, right? So I'm not stating anything that's not obvious to everyone. So, but it's obvious that yes, they got to make him one-dimensional. They got to slow down the run because he's actually very smart with the ball. He gets rid of the ball. He knows where his outlets are. Again, he has pretty good answers when it comes to that. Stopping the run and doing it in a way that doesn't stress the defense when it comes to coverage, because they do have some vertical threats, whether you're talking speed or some of that size down the field. Yeah,
Mims can fly. Everybody's favorite wide receiver 1, Troy Franklin, can fly. Sutton's a little faster than he gets credit for, but more of a ball winner in that type of mold. I'm really interested to see what happens on this side of the ball, especially. Also, I love the film there with all the checkdowns. Like, it's just so reminiscent of the Sean Payton offenses, and like Pierre Thomas has 90 catches. Alvin Kamara has all these catches. Mark Ingram has all these catches. Like, it fits Nix's style, but it's very much coached from Payton. And it makes sense. We saw Brady, Manning. We've seen Allen do it, and we've applauded him for it. That's that easy profit. The defense is getting into their drop, and you can hit the running back as the defense is still sinking into coverage. Like, man, like the amount of space that you can take advantage of is so important. I'm with you in lockstep. You got to stop the run, which is why I thought that question earlier from Adam, I believe, of like, dude, does Babbage blitz more early on? Does he blitz more in the second half? If they can stop the run without having to commit bodies in form of like a run blitz or bodies to the box, that would be tremendous. But I wonder if they can they do it with the front? Can they do it with the light box? And if they can't, like, I'm looking, or I should say, I'm hoping that's an immediate pivot. Like, if the Broncos are able to move the ball on the ground in that first drive, I'm looking for the second drive that they're like, screw it, we're run blitzing. We're bringing bodies in the box, because you cannot let that run game get going. And I think they'll blitz more to stop the run than necessarily stop the pass in this one potentially, just because if that run game gets going for Denver, it creates this positive domino effect for them and this negative snowball for the Bills defense and the game script element as a whole, like we talked about. So I look for them to get that run game off course, maybe not necessarily with the same level of commitment as they did against Detroit, because that offense is a different beast, but it's got to be priority number one. Because if you let Nix in that offense, and more importantly, Sean Payton, get comfortable and show that, they're going to eat, because he's going to understand where you're vulnerable, and he already knows that. And now that he knows it'll work, he's just going to kind of keep going after it, and you're going to be spinning your tires and chasing your tail a little bit, which terrifies me.
Yeah, and to wrap it up, when it comes to like the straight drop back passing game, I do think there are some opportunities. Again, the strength is the offensive line, but I do think there are some really good opportunities if we're talking straight drop back game from the Broncos. And one thing that showed up on film is, especially on third downs, where opposing defenses were running this 3-man game. You see it to the field here, where they have 3 rushers, 3 D linemen to the field here, and they're attacking that half slide protection. So left guard, left tackle are out to the left side there. You have a 3-man game here by the Chargers, and the backside guard, Powers, is at a different level. He's not able to help, and that the handoff between the center and the right guard is not smooth, and you see that pressure hit home. You're seeing a lot of the opposing offenses or opposing defenses use this against the Broncos. And so a lot of times it's attacking the interior offensive line. Again, it's a strength when we're talking run game and pass game, but the center position, I think there's some opportunities there. And I know that the Bills know this because I talked to a few of them. They know that the center is going to be attacked a little bit. He's going to be under duress. They need to do some things just like you're seeing these teams do. Work those interior games and get one-on-ones against this center of the Broncos. Get Ed Oliver, get Group coming as a looper down the A gap, and like you're seeing here from Buckner. Those type of plays, those type of 3-man games to attack that center where he's the pivot guy between that partial slide, 3-man slide, and then the 2-man to the other side. There's opportunities there for the Bills D line.
Yeah, absolutely. No disrespect to Luke Wattenberg, the center for the Broncos, but there is, and part of it too is because the other 4 guys and how well they're playing, but he is kind of like the weak link.
They're up here, so standard high.
So even if he's just like a regular average center, he's still below like subpar compared to how the guys around him are playing. But that is, that aspect to attack. And if you said it right, the very first thing you said when you started to pull up those clips was, getting Nix into these like known passing situations. That's also, I think, stopping the run is so important. Get him into 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9. Get that game script in your favor. Make him have to beat you with true drop back situations, known passing down in distances where he has to go out. He has to read everything. You can get into your bag from coverages. If you want to throw some sims and some creepers in there, cool. If you want to do some of the cool non-traditional Tampa stuff, out a dime or whatever. And then, you know what? Yeah, maybe let's walk some guys up to the line and let's create that man-on-man 5-0 protection. And then we're playing some games. We're gaming up the protection. Can we force Bo Nix to maybe adjust? And maybe he wants to keep the running back in because he thinks we're bringing 5 or 6, but we're not. And now that running back is getting out into the route distribution later, gives us more time to come downhill, play top down, stop them short, as we've seen the Bills do before. I'm hopeful for the game plan, even though I am worried that like that first drive is going to be so important. Like I just feel like in terms of a statement for the defense, but also in terms of potentially getting into the mind or the head of the Broncos in terms of getting them off script. And then you stop them after maybe you've already scored, or you stop them and you give the ball to Allen and then you score. And then that train starts rolling a little bit. I am excited. Erik, anything for that side of the ball to put a bow on it? Are you good? Any thoughts on anything regarding that Broncos offense, Bills defense, and that relationship and matchup?
No, I think you're spot on with the early drives by the Broncos, because again, the defense being on the field, the crowds is going to be going nuts, and they're going to want to do some things early to shut them up. All right. And one of those things that we can expect is, some screens, whether it's those wide receiver screens. If you see 4x1, or you see
God.
a trips and a wide receiver or running back coming across to make it a 4x1, expect that swing screen.
Yeah.
Expect that screen. Get your hands up, as we've seen Groot do and Epinesa do, because that's going out there, and they've done it a bunch this year. And we know the Bills do surrender a lot of screens. I think they've had 96 screens attempted on them as a defense, and that is number 1 overall. But they've only surrendered 5.94 yards per play, which is 22nd. Again, it's below average, but it's not as bad as people think. But they have given up 507 yards. That is the,
and it's been in key. It's been in key moments, like
timing.
2nd and long, or like a 3rd down, and so it's kind of like I think it's a bigger problem than what I'm about to say, but kind of like the James Cook drops.
Yeah.
Where he drops them in these high leverage moments, and it makes you think it's worse than it is. And yeah, just from the Broncos, again, I mentioned it in passing earlier, a 14% screen rate on the year. That is the 4th highest in the league. You're going to see it. And then what Payton has been doing recently of, how they've been using Mims to kind of send him on that, like a jet or the blast motion across, and then he's coming in like an orbit return, and how they're getting him the ball, and the linemen
just
are
like
getting
the Bills
down.
do.
Bro,
it's just like the Bills do with Shakir.
And you tie into that, or tap into, I should say, that speed of Mims and how shifty he is after. And yeah, Payton designing.
You'll see him in the backfield too, right? You'll see him in the backfield, and they will motion him out and to get different looks and whatnot. And again, if you see a 4x1 look or a trips look, and then you see a receiver coming across the formation from the other side, screen. All right. That's literally their tell. The Bills do it too. They do it too. But again, it's a screen. Get your hands up. Get those hands up to bat those passes down and get those turnovers, because those opportunities are going to be there. Getting those passing lanes on these screens.
Yeah, and tying it all in with the run game and the Bills defense, and the spine has to be on point. We've got to see good production from the 2nd and 3rd wave of interior defenders. Ed and Daquan haven't necessarily been up to the level that the Bills have needed them to be, or fans have expected. I think as the year has gone on, Daquan has quietly gotten better and improved. Ed, a little bit louder in terms of how he's improved, but they've got to get it, whether it's Jefferson or Johnson or Phillips or Carter. There cannot be this let up between the 1st wave and the 2nd or 3rd. And the 1st wave has to show out. It can't just be a whole bunch of meh, and let alone if there's like the separation between the 1st and 2nd and potentially 3rd. Yeah, the defensive line has to bring their hard hats, especially the interior, control this game, set the tempo, which honestly can be said for a lot of games potentially. Now, that side of the ball wrapped up, done and dusted. Erik, let us pivot to the other side of the ball. This Denver Broncos defense playing against this Bills offense. I'm very excited for the trench battles on that side, because I feel like it's a strength on strength. Denver's defensive line is just this awesome amalgamation of speed and power and technique and nastiness and run defense and headhunting pass rush. And the Bills offensive line has transcended this year, both in terms of run game diversity, pass blocking ability, and then tying it all together is, Josh Allen, one of the best players in football, Pat Surtain, arguably the best defensive player kind of in all of football, definitely the best corner on the planet. Like, what they've got on that side of the ball is really exciting. This is, I really feel like, where more of the prime matchup has been. Even before the Bills played the Broncos, I'd watch 7 games of Broncos tape throughout the year, because the metrics kept showing up and I wanted to see what they were doing. They're a fun unit. They're a quality unit, especially considering how bad they were last year. Like, Miami hung 70 on them, and then they get rid of Justin Simmons and they come back this year, and I'm going to read them in a bit. Their metrics are nuts. The tape is good. It's the fun side of the ball to talk about.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent on that side of the ball. They have guys that come in that 2nd and 3rd wave that are just hunters. I mean, aside from their starters, they can just come in and go get the ball. They have guys that are going to give the Bills offensive line issues because they're stout at the point of attack. I mean, DJ Jones, oh my God. Like, we're going to get into some of the run game stuff in here, but he's a stud. You talk about Zach Allen. I mean, they have talent all across that D line, all across that front 7, but they also do a great job with their coverages to kind of take away that each third of the outside of the field. And overall, they just create chaos. They're 8th in havoc rate. They're creating a havoc play 18.3% of the time. 282 pressures, first overall. They got over 60 plus sacks. They're tops in that. They have 15 interceptions, which is a lot. The Bills are right at 16. So we talk about the Bills defense and all the turnovers or interceptions they get. Broncos are right there. And then overall, 5 defensive touchdowns. You can't give them those plays. Force the offense to score the points. Do not give away special teams points or points to their defense.
I don't want to be the person that reads off a bunch of metrics, but these are significantly impressive, and so I'm going to be that person. The Broncos defense. 4th in DVOA, 6th against the pass, 2nd versus the run. 1st in EPA per play, 1st in EPA per pass, 1st in EPA per rush, 1st in pressures, 3rd in pressure rate, 1st in sacks, 1st in sack rate, 2nd in blitz rate, 3rd in stuffed rate, which are runs that go for 0 or less yards, 8th in rush yards over expected per rush, 11th in yards before contact per rush, 4th in yards after contact per rush. And then you want to talk about individual players and, okay, well, all these pressures and how does it balance out? Out of 242 qualifying defensive linemen, the Broncos have 4 players in the top 31 for pressures. Zach Allen is 5th, a quiet 5th. He does not get enough acknowledgement for what he's done this year. Zach Allen, 5th. Jonathan Cooper tied for 15th. Nick Benito, 21st. John Franklin Myers tied for 31st. Now you might hear that and be like, okay, maybe it's volume. Volume doesn't mean anything. What does it look like from an efficiency standpoint? Well, I'm glad you asked. They also have 4 players out of that 242 that are in the top 20 for pass rush productivity. Nick Benito is tied for 8th. Dondrea Tillman is tied for 12th. Jonathan Franklin Myers is tied for 16th. And Jonathan Cooper is tied for 18th. And then on the back end is maybe the defensive player of the year and the best corner on the planet. And yeah, just it starts up front with the rotation, the nastiness, how they play schematically and individually. They can beat you with scheme. They can beat you from an individual one-on-one win standpoint. And then you've got someone like DJ Jones, number 93, anchoring it all. And just his block deconstruction, his play recognition. He's been such a monster inside and really excels in their, 3-4 base odd front.
Yeah, and I think he's the type of guy that can give the Bills interior offensive linemen some issues. 11.8% run stop percentage, 37 tackles overall versus the run, 21 solo. And watch on these plays, watch his helmet, watch his eyes, how he immediately gets his eyes to the guy that is going to be blocking him and how that guy is going to block him, whether it's a down block or just a base block or he's trying to reach him. He understands how they are trying to out leverage him, and he fights it with physicality. He knows how to anchor at the point of attack, and you'll see him violently disengage from a lot of these offensive linemen, whether they're running gap runs or zone runs. And you're going to see a lot of these, tackle for losses or no gain type of runs when he is at the point of attack, and he fires up that defense, man. He's an emotional leader at the point of attack versus a run. He's going to give McGovern some issues. He's going to even give guys like David Edwards and Osiris Torrance issues at times when they're trying to execute some of these blocks at the point of attack.
You hit it. He just plays with leverage like all the time. And this goes back to when he was with the Niners. I loved him when he was with the Niners. And then he goes to Denver and just, the ability to see the double teams, to sense them. And also for people too, look how he's constantly using his hands. Blockers are not getting into his chest. He is meeting power with power. He's getting his hands. It's not just the use of hands. It's the placement. It's the extension. He's got shock and pop in those hands. He's knocking guys back. And then he's doing all of this, Erik, like you said, while watching the running back and reading the play and reading that track. And then if he steps off the field, your boy Malcolm Roach, who's a super solid run defender. I got a clip for him. I put a sad face in the note because of it for you. You're welcome. He's the guy coming in as his backup, and he's a stout. Like, we wanted him on the Bills as a potential starter at that.
He was my second rated free agent target.
Yes, on your list,
to watch his film, and we're gonna have to break it down, unfortunately.
I got a couple plays of him. Yeah, it's a quality unit across the board, and the mix of all of it, Zach Allen's skill set and his traits and tools versus Jones versus Benito versus Cooper versus, Jonah Ellis. Like, they've got all this little bit of everything, this mix of speed and dip and bend, athleticism, run defense, power, tenacity, gap shooting, gap and a half, gapping ability. All of this combines And Vance Joseph has done a really good job of wielding all of it in tune to a tremendously successful year on that side of the ball, as I essentially read a giant piece of parchment with all those stats.
I mean, it's a long list, and it's because they are so talented on that side of the ball. They have the talent, and they have a very good scheme to go with it, as you just said. They're humming right now on that side of the ball. So the defense of the Broncos, it reminds me of a couple of games this year, a couple teams that the Bills play. We're thinking about defensive philosophy, defensive scheme, and that is the Patriots. It's a very similar scheme. They just don't have the talent overall that the Broncos do. But more importantly, I think the Lions are very similar. And Aaron Glenn, their defensive coordinator, I think they do a lot of the same things that you're going to see from the Broncos overall. But when the Bills played them and they hung up all those points on that Lions defense, McNeil was not in that game, and he would have been a big issue, I think, if he didn't get injured. Much like we're talking about DJ Jones. You talked about Malcolm Roach, their backup nose tackle, D tackle. John Franklin Myers has always given the Bills fits.
I was literally going to say like the notorious Jets, right? John Franklin Myers. Yep.
Yeah, with the Jets, always giving the Bills issues. I mean, they got speed on the edge, as we'll get to in a little while. They have stout guys at the point of attack that can, as you said, 1 or 2 gap and really allow the defense to play those 2 high structures and quarters, cover 6 and all that, and not have to load the box because they have guys that can be stout at the point of attack and 2 gap.
And they really do a good job of, I like some of the stuff that linebacker Alex Singleton was doing earlier in the year, but then he goes down. So you're looking at Barton and Stranad. I can never pronounce the name right. So I've kind of given up. I just call him 40 every time because he's number 40, which is a unique linebacker identifier. That really is the area that you want to attack this defense with. But the defensive line does a good job of kind of shielding them, protecting them a little bit. And then you've got Surtain, another guy on that side of the ball who we liked, and I believe was on your free agent list, Brandon Jones.
Yes.
Who's making plays. Like, it's just this who's who of like how to hurt Erik.
Oh, yeah. We're looking at one of his plays, right? Yeah.
Just like he's playing fun on the back end. PJ Locke is nice coming forward. And then Riley Moss, who I think for a lot of Bills fans see as this vulnerability because of what happened against T. Higgins. But he was
a Bills fit coming out. He was a Bills fit coming from Iowa. So
and he fits the run well. And he had a better year than he, I think, is getting credit for. He got banged up a little bit. And then what happened against T, they really do have this quality unit, but it starts up front and then kind of ends with what you have on the back end. And then in between are these linebackers that you could potentially kind of attack a little bit.
Yeah, and we'll get to some of that later. I wanted to get to some of the film that you cut up. So Anthony did the Broncos defense when it comes to scouting them and pulling up some of this film. So Anthony, let's jump into this film. And this segment, the Broncos defensive film, is brought to you by our partners, Easy Loan Auto Sales. We don't have a specific play to break down this week, but we're going to break down the Broncos defense and some of the things that Anthony scouted and highlighted.
Yes. And of course, with that being said, thank you very much to Easy Loan for their partnership again this year. And you folks, if you don't know already, Easy Loan Auto Sales, regardless of your credit situation, Easy Loan can help get you behind the wheel and on the road to better credit. All of their vehicles include a 2-year, 24,000-mile warranty. They have 3 convenient locations in Buffalo, Lockport, and Niagara Falls. They can get you driving today. Go to easyloanauto.com to start your accelerated approval. Let's dive into some of this Bills defensive tape. Widescreen it. I feel like people are watching and we're like, whoa. Erik normally does the presenting. What is happening right now?
I love this. I like this. Right? I could do this some more, Anthony. I'm not gonna lie.
I was waiting for you to be like, I'm just gonna kick my feet back and
get my popcorn.
Yeah, right. Just relax. So this first one that we got, a non-traditional Tampa rotation from the Broncos here. We've talked about this. The Bills have done it throughout the year. The Broncos are really fun with it. I think what gets lost in the conversation about the Broncos defense is, they do have a high man coverage rate, a high cover 1 rate. We talk about Surtain. We talk about this defensive line. There is more creativity from a coverage standpoint with this defense that I think they get credit for. We have an example here with their non-traditional Tampa on 2nd and 10. This turns into Tampa 2 robber, Tampa 2 hole, depending on how you want to verbalize it. The players I have highlighted there, you have Jaquan McMillan. I say Jalen all the time. There's too many McMillans. He's their normal slot or their apex. He's around that 30-yard line. He's going to drop to the deep half. Brandon Jones, that split field safety right now, also circled. He's going to become the pole runner or that hole player, that robber. And then we're going to watch the edges drop into coverage. The off-ball linebacker, Alex Singleton, blitz. And then let's just watch this kind of play out and see what happens here. So there's the snap. Here goes McMillan to, that's a curved line, but who cares? That deep half. Watch Jones spin down. And then another thing to emphasize here again, also get a little bit of a simulated pressure kind of look. Yes. We're going to get a drop. Here's our off-ball linebacker who wasn't showing pressure pre-snap. He's going to go. And let's just watch how this kind of plays out a little bit in real time. Throw deterred. Baker has to scramble. This is on 2nd and long. Turns into 3rd and long. What I also think is nice, too, with this, Erik, is I like the design. I like the presentation. I like how they get to it. And you'll see Jones immediately jump Jalen McMillan on that over, which is what deters the throw. But because you're taking that risk of dropping Benito into coverage right here, you do have the opportunity to hit Mike Evans here. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's something that showed up more on the tape as you watch enough of it, that these looks and what they spin to, especially what they blitz, again, 2nd highest blitz rate in the league, there are opportunities to get them if you process it correctly, if you attack it. There was an opportunity here. Maybe Benito jumps underneath this a little bit, depending on when Baker throws it. But overall, a nice play and a nice job by the Broncos here.
I love the disguise. I love the 5-man surface by the D line there, and then how those edges drop out and that linebacker comes. So it's that, as you said, simulated pressure, and it's a really nice rotation. But this is where Josh has to be on his P's and Q's, because the Broncos, their weakness is up the middle. It's short middle. They're DVOA to the middle of the field. They're ranked 29th. Short middle, 28th. And you can see right here, pause right there. That crosser, 15 is coming across. And yes, Jones is cutting it and he's aiming for it. But you would expect with zone coverage, you'd want that receiver to sit right there. And I know Baker's eyes aren't there, but they should be, because he's not going to throw that out route with a trapping corner, who I think especially it's because it's Patrick Surtain.
Yeah, that's
You're not throwing that. Move on from that. Get your eyes to the middle of the field. Your third option here. That receiver and him should be on the same page. And this is why it's important. Getting the ball to the middle of the field. There are those opportunities, but if you're not there within the timing and rhythm of the play, you miss those opportunities, and now you're in the scramble drill.
Yeah, and of course here, also one little, I wanted to make sure it was this one. I've got so much tape in my head. Here's DJ Jones. Just watch how he blows up the left guard.
Oh, hello.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Again, he ends up he gets taken out. Barton, 62, keeps his hands on him and widens him out there, but he's like, "Oh, you're coming for help?" Bang. Underneath him. He's like always playing with leverage and just absolute car crash.
Yeah, it's again, that time is fleet, right? Like, it's fleeting. You're going to miss those windows. You're not going to be able to get the pass off against the speed and scheme of this defense.
Yeah, so a nice one to kind of start off with a little bit here for the Broncos. And tying into it, if your eyes are on time or if your receiver settles in that spot, reading everything, playing it out, which we've seen Allen do with a decent amount of regularity, this defense can be got and can be had. This next one that we're going to look at, reminiscent of our breakdown that we talked about, the Scout and the Chiefs, when we first did this for the playoffs. We get a drop 8 on 3rd and 4 here. This is something I thought was interesting in watching the Broncos tape. They will go to, these drop 8 looks, but it's not, okay, it's on 3rd and long or it's in the red zone. They'll go to drop 8 on like 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 5. They'll do it in a variety of ways. What I like about this one is the man coverage presentation that you get. Yeah, so before the snap, actually, if we watch as we start here, Cade Otton over here he was aligned as the number 2 to this side. He's coming across in motion. His man follows him. So he travels with him. And then we get to this presentation and everything looks man. The outside corner, 39 who traveled with Otton. Surtain is lined head up on Mike Evans in kind of the apex role. You've got McMillan, their normal slot or their nickel, on the outside against Godwin. We even have Alex Singleton up here, aligned head up on Bucky Irving. So much, or maybe Rashad White, so many elements of this is looking like man coverage from the CBs, from the linebacker, that initial travel, all of it. But on the snap, we're going to get a drop 8 into a cover 2, maybe a Tampa 2. The route distribution doesn't necessarily help us a ton here from 39, but let us watch the play and kind of go forward here. Go to this next stop. Want to focus on these 3. So Pat Surtain is that first one up here, aligned head up on Evans. Then here's McMillan, and there is that man who traveled across with Otton. Surtain is going to stay inside and play that hook curl. McMillan's going to be your cloud corner. And then we're going to watch what Brandon Jones here does on the back end. So I'll let it run from here.
So pretty.
Yeah, just look at the spin. Look at the drive from Jones. Bang. Nice athleticism.
That range, too.
Right. My biggest thing on this is we let it play. I feel like he should have followed Locke outside and could have had a house call potentially. Locke was really on his horse trying to lead him with it. We'll go back to initially on the snap. Again, everything like this plays out or looks like man right now, especially with having Pat in the slot. Granted, he can pretty much
disguise very well, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And they're
very well.
And you've talked about it all week. They are a man coverage team. True Media has them playing man 32.8% of the time, 7th overall. It's 3rd and 4th, 3rd and medium. You're expecting man coverage. Everything that is presented is man coverage.
Single high spin out safety here.
Yeah, but they spin out of it. And I, at the top of the route, the corner route, that corner to the bottom of the screen, he does a really good job. I mean, this is a ballsy throw by Baker, even with the spacing of that corner. But the play by Jones starting at the 50 and he's breaking on it and then high pointing it, like that is one hell of a play from a half field safety.
Yeah, it was part of the reason. He was on your free agent. I believe he was on your list.
You're killing me, Smalls.
I knew we talked about him. I couldn't remember if he was officially on the list. And I was saying again to kind of jog. Yeah, this is a really nice play from Jones, but I like the presentation. I like the disguise. And then again, if we're, looking edge rusher, aligned over the guard, and you're thinking, okay, you're trying to create a matchup, and it's like, nope, he's dropping in the hook curl. And this is what cover 2, I think if the route distribution played out, you're going to get more of a pull runner aspect here. Yeah. But at the end of the day, similar idea. And then, really nice athletic play from Brandon Jones. Everybody gets on their horse. One of their 15 interceptions on the year that you mentioned earlier. The Bills, again, very turnover prone defense for the Bills, had 16. So that's kind of something put in perspective. This one doesn't need a lot of analysis or, a setup, I should say, on my part. This is Zach Allen just kind of being a problem. I'm just going to play it a bunch because it's awesome.
And that move is just ridiculous from him. And Anthony, not to like railroad this segment, but like Zach Allen versus the Bills guards, David Edwards, Osiris Torrance, that is one of the biggest keys to the game, in my opinion, because Allen is a technical guy. He's got great technique. He's got a motor. He's got violent hands, as you'll see here. And while the Bills have done a really good job when we're talking their guards this year at anchoring and keeping the depth of that pocket for Josh, David Edwards is usually aggressive. You'll see him 1 and 2 hand punch right at the line of scrimmage. He's aggressive early. Osiris does sit back a little more, but Osiris, he struggles with lateral agility. You see that right there. You see that quickness from Zach Allen. I think Zach can get him later in the pass rush. I think Zach Allen can get David Edwards early when David Edwards goes a punch. So I think those two guys, Osiris Torrance and David Edwards, have a long day ahead of them when we're talking the pass rush of Zach Allen and what he brings to their pass rush from the inside out.
I completely agree. Like, he's got that stoutness to his game, but then also like a little juicier, like the hand. I love the hand usage. You talked about it, like the violence in the hands, but him just kind of reading as he destroys Daniels here. Didn't Daniels also have a super rough day? Oh no, it was Broderick Jones against the Bills, against Groot, right?
Oh yeah, yep.
In the preseason, I was like, oh no, did we just do Daniels dirty again? I was like, no, it was Broderick Jones. As Allen starts to break him down, just how he adjusts, and it goes from violence in the hands to right there, puts the left foot in the ground and bang. And then for him to swim him, like he's dead to rights. He is beat completely clean. And then he's able to, the ankle flexion off of, let me go back a little, that ankle flexion off the right ankle, bang, as he plants and turns. And then now you're bearing down on Justin Fields, who's extremely athletic. Granted, Fields wasn't on the move yet. I just think this was such a dominant kind of grizzly bear type of move from Allen, and you see this all the time.
And go back to the start of the play in the setup and the presentation. Look, again, Benito's in that 2-point stance off to the left side, off to the field, but you see there are 3 rushers that they have to account for to the left of the center. And then you got the 2, like we talked about, to the right of the center. And so, again, it's a partial slide. 3 guys, center, left guard, left tackle, are sliding left. Usually it's a man side, but I can't tell if it's man or zone here. But either way, Daniels is that pivot guy. He essentially has to worry about the gap to his left and the gap to his right. And so that is a win for Zach Allen. Again, he can win in many ways. He can win quickly. He can win late in rushes. He can win with his first move. He can win with transitions or counters. The Bills' offensive guards have a long day ahead. And I know our guy, O'Cyrus Torrance, hasn't allowed a sack this year, technically. Zach's going to give him a run for his money this weekend when it comes to that.
Especially with these alignments. And that was a great, call up by you. You see that slide to the left. Their odd front presentation, which we've talked about on this show, tends to give the Bills run blocking scheme fits at times in terms of, especially from a double team standpoint, but they use it to kind of create these one-on-one situations with guards, put them on an island, whether it's Allen or whether it's JFM, they are going to attack. And so if you are Torrance, if you are Edwards, you have to be on notice exactly for this kind of stuff. You get that half slide to the left. And to your point, it looks like, man on man here. We've got man on man here. And Zach Allen does. Oof. Honestly, there's literally I like this Broncos defense a lot. It was very hard for me to whittle this down to 9 plays. We could have done a whole film room just on Zach Allen. Like there's so much for what he's able to do. Another example of him here aligned slightly to the outside shoulder of the right tackle. So that's where Zach Allen is. This is Nick Benito over here. Presentation, general, which obviously we can get into, but I like this play. I talked about the various skill sets and tools and traits that this defensive line has. I thought this one was a nice juxtaposition of the athleticism, the juice, the dip that Benito has versus just, Zach Allen just playing like Godzilla and kind of working through and bearing down on the quarterback. I'll play it in real time so you folks can see it, and then we'll go in slow-mo, start to watch it a little bit. Just the Benito lunges at Baker, still gets a piece of that ball. We'll start with Benito. This is against one of the best left tackles in all of football. Tristan Wirfs is absolutely tremendous for Tampa. He was tremendous as a right tackle, been tremendous as a left tackle. He's got Benito based on size and just overall frame. Benito gets his hands to him first, and then look at the lean. Like, Wirfs is completely bent over and kind of perpendicular to the ground, and just look at the dip and the lean from Benito and how he has the core strength to power through it. He's damn near on the ground, about to put his hand through the ground. Wirfs, all he can do is hold him, decides not to. Benito powers through it, lunges, gets a piece of that ball, and that's how we get the deflection, goes out. Singleton almost gets his hands on it. And then, Erik, if we focus on Zach Allen again, nothing crazy here, just him working through multiple blockers. Essentially.
Not much here. He essentially just works. And you even see the running back go, "You guys need help over there?"
Peeking inside is Cody Mock.
And
and these are two good linemen, like Cody Mock, 69, and Graham Barton, rookie from Duke, who I wish we got to see at the Senior Bowl last year, but he skipped, which is understandable considering the prospect he was going to become. Just Zach Allen, just bull in a china shop, Godzilla, King Kong, however you want to go, just violent and mean and angry. Look at this. Just look at that. Like, that's
record.
Just
game record.
Absolute game record. And it's just fun to see. I thought this play did a good job kind of juxtaposing their skill sets.
Yeah, and 2 things real quick. McGovern's help is going to be incredibly important on this one. I do expect them to shade him more to Zach Allen's side. And again, keep their tackles on an island. So you're going to see Deion Dawkins this week with the game at home. He is going to be timing those snaps, and hopefully he doesn't draw any penalties, doesn't have any false starts, because his getting out of his stance is going to be that important against the speed and bendiness of Nick Benito. And you see it there. Like, it's going to be important for Dawkins to time the snaps properly, being at Highmark Stadium, because he's going to need every inch against the speed and bend of Nick Benito.
Yeah, and that's Benito's bread and butter. He's become more of a complete rusher and more of a complete player overall than I thought, just given what he was at Oklahoma, which was just pure speed and juice and nothing more. I still think they can attack him in the run. It's a conversation as we go forward a little bit. But yeah, nice, impressive play of, from Benito, from Allen, the juxtaposition of those two, an individual element to this film. Erik, this is arguably my favorite clip, but I also really love Pat Surtain, so I'm probably biased. We have Benito highlighted here. I'm going to showcase him more on the end zone angle a little bit because he helps get some nice pressure on Anthony Richardson, but you can see it from this angle. But Pat is the focus on this one. You're going to get a Tampa 2 from the Broncos on this one. You are going to get a smash concept to the top. So we're going to get a little hitch from Pittman, and then we're going to get a corner route from that number 2 receiver to the top, Alec Pierce. And just watch Pat. He's going to honor the hitch. Then he's going to sink underneath the corner for an interception. I'll play it in real time. Erik, this play from Pat is just wild to watch. Watch him honor and then bang, drop, pick.
Yeah, and that's a tough play to make. And honestly, a throw probably shouldn't have been made short side of the field,
absolutely,
where Patrick Surtain is in obvious trapping posture, and get to the top of the route where the 2 receivers are breaking a little bit further along. And you'll see as this is a smash concept. They're attacking Patrick Surtain. Why? I don't know why. But look at the spacing, first of all. Look at the spacing of the receivers. It's terrible. So you're not stressing this corner at all. So you see Surtain initially come up like he's going to jump that under route by the number 1. And of course, he realizes, guess what? They're throwing a corner behind me or a flat, a out route behind me. You see the spacing. It's horrible. And that's why he's able to make a play. So details. It's always in the details. Hopefully Brady's spacing on his smash concepts are better. But honestly, if you see that, don't throw him. Don't challenge Patrick Surtain. Don't do it.
No, him in general, I would just stay away. I'm similar in the same boat with what it was with Stingley when the Bills played the Texans. Just wherever Stingley is, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
But especially like you pointed out, short side of the field, there's no reason to do it. And then Richardson, I'm trying to hit that freeze frame again. He pumps it, and so he's trying to get Pat to bump hard or bite hard. But even if he does, there's still not a lot of space for the corner to the corner route to work.
Right.
And so by the time he's holding it, now he's got to reload and throw this. Pat is already just able to put his feet in the ground and slam on the brakes and then drop back underneath.
Right.
Yeah, but that's still it, right? Like I put some fault on the design, the spacing, Richardson, and everything that you alluded to as well. But I just thought that Pat essentially shuts this down by himself.
Yeah, in many ways, he baited him. His athleticism allowed him to get back out and to back out of that and bail out of that. But I don't like the play design by the offense and the spacing, but it still shows how good that corner is. And you just don't challenge him because, again, they will get those interceptions.
Absolutely. And then end zone angle, Nick Benito here on the left side. Just watch him cause some havoc on this play. What do we get? Shocked that he's going around the corner. Some dip. Yep. Dead. Powers through that course. This is literally, the left tackle is literally like, okay, let me try to hold him. Has a club on his hand, so he can't really grab. But just watch Benito just continue to work through, draws the flag. Doesn't matter because we end up getting the interception from Pat.
It was like he was coming up behind Benito with a stun gun.
That's
what he was trying to do right there. Slow him down and then stun him in the back right there.
Tase him.
That was terrible.
Yeah, it would just absolutely.
That's some get off. That's some explosiveness off that corner and ability to bend under the hands and then flatten to the quarterback.
Yeah, which again is his bread and butter. If you give him the corner and you give him the arc and let him run it, he will run it every single day of the week. Dawkins, and something we've seen a lot, Dawkins being comfortable, being on an island, being in that space, you got to be able to get that hand out, get that punch, get that inside hand, ride him right around. What I also like to see, this is part of, kind of highlighting the Broncos, but also tying in Allen, the Bills offense. If Benito wants to get upfield and wants to turn that corner, cool. If Dawkins can ride him a little bit, exactly. And then Allen is out that gap, as we've seen time and time again.
And that's what he wants to do, because it's going to be hard for him with the speed and explosiveness of Benito. It's going to be hard for Dawkins to punch, to slow him down, to kind of stunt that rush. So what he's got to do is, again, use his angles and his kick slide, but ride him wide. Once he gets, in close contact with him, put his hand on that inside hip and just ride him wide to Josh. And so Josh can either step up in the pocket or, as you said, escape the pocket, so that he has a better, field vision looking down the field. I think that's what Dawkins is going to have to do. It's going to be very difficult for Dawkins to, match the speed and explosiveness of Benito.
Yeah, but if you can get those big old paws on him and ride him a little bit, again, you just need to deter Benito, use his momentum and what he's trying to do against him, and allow Allen to kind of do the rest. I'm interested to kind of see that scramble aspect of what Allen's legs will do. This is just Pat Surtain fitting the run, all world, everything at corner, but And Riley Moss, you'll get this from him as well. You'll get this from McMillan. These corners are not afraid to fit the run in the box or outside. They come forward with purpose, with urgency. Starts with Pat. It's nice when your all-pro corner is willing to come forward and play the run with that type of urgency, with that type of physicality. There's no hesitation. He sees it, closes. And you see these type of plays regularly, but you expect it more from like Riley Moss or, McMillan. But you see Pat, this end zone angle is nice just because of how he shoots out. And you see it. He delivers a shot to Bucky. Watch Bucky's head. Oof. Like Pat gets that shoulder right on the chin. Like when he comes forward, he's coming forward with bad intentions, plays it right. You get the fit from 55. Barton is a good run fit on a run designed to kind of create this kind of matchup.
Yeah, he doesn't miss tackles. Surtain, you see him coming from depth and fitting up a very talented running back and laying the lick on him. But once again, we talked about how stout the Broncos are up front. They're in a too high structure. Their field corner is off and soft, and they're still able to make this run bounce. But then they also have the talent at corner to come up and make the tackle in the open field.
Yeah, you get McMillan shooting. And then kind of what we talked about earlier, right? Those gap exchanges. So you got this shot inside. So Barton fits accordingly over the top. But McMillan and everything you have here, they cancel everything out here. Forces Bucky to bounce it right into the waiting arms of Pat and Barton. I really should have just done. I should have man. Right.
It's when you see the Bills run concepts and how often they run duo, it's going to be difficult to get those matchups because the Broncos corners are such good run fitters, whether they're up near the line of scrimmage or from depth, as you saw in that play.
There's plays, and again, this isn't it, but they'll run duo, and you'll see Riley Moss here, and he's sitting here fitting this gap or fitting this gap against any running back. Like there was absolute no fear. And again, I think maybe you expect that a little bit, like an Iowa corner, he's the corner too. Add in some other particulars about him and his play style, and you might think, okay, that makes sense. But Pat will do the same thing. McMillan does the same thing. This is a quick one, Erik. This is for you, Malcolm Roach. Sad face. I put there. You're going to get a wham from Cade Otton, so he's trying to take advantage of him. And again, it's not the best wham block in the world, but I just like how aware Roach is of it as he comes forward. Baker's going to send Otton in that motion to kind of get him going. Roach comes forward and is ready. And as soon as he feels Barton leave him, his eyes go to the running back and then bang, he catches Otton. Just get the hell off me.
Yeah.
Bucky has to bounce it. And then what are we getting? Population of the football, as we like to say. So it starts with Roach kind of throwing this run off track, but then here comes the rest of the defense to help make the play, and you get a lot of dudes to Bucky who are going to make the stop here.
And that's the thing with their interior defensive linemen, whether it's Roach, Franklin Myers, DJ Jones. They have the ability to two gap. They have the size and physicality to do it, but more importantly, they have the football IQ. When you're a two gapping defensive lineman, your football IQ is incredibly important because you have to be able to read blocks quickly, not just individual blocks. Here comes a wham block by the tight end, but more importantly, what the offensive lineman or the offense is doing as a run concept altogether, and being able to recognize the big picture, but then also the micro here. Here comes a wham block. I'm going to blow that dude up and then go and get in the ball. That's why they are so stout at the point of attack, not just because of their size, but also because of that football IQ.
Yeah, and this play up front from Roach deters the whole run, helps, make the play. And now the linebackers
go back a few frames, dude. Look at all the helmets and the eyes of the Broncos defenders. Look at their leverage. Look at the leverage and control they have on the blockers or guys that are approaching them to block them. All of those guys are in control with their eyes and with their hands and leverage.
Yep. And then because of what happens inside, Barton's leverage on Singleton is completely useless because Bucky has to bounce this and just watch Singleton now. Watch this play out. He's got similarly. Okay. Let me use my hands, take on the block, but here's my eyes. He watches what happens and Singleton's like, oh, okay, I'm just not going to engage. Let me just go over here to where the ball is.
It's amazing. They have speed. They have physicality at the point of attack. They're going to be very difficult to run against.
Yeah, I am very interested to see this trench battle because the Bills O-line is a good line as a group and individually, but the Broncos are good as well. this is something, these last 2 plays are some successful plays, some runs against them that I wanted to talk about. If I'm running against Denver, anything to do with removing and adding gaps. So we could do some split zone if we want to get into it, but I really like the gap scheme runs, your traditional gap scheme runs, or if you want to do some stuff with some Allen keeper stuff, some read elements, or we want to do QB bash and counter and all that. But the gap scheme runs that teams have leaned into, we saw from a variety of teams, anything to get downhill, really use that lead blocker and attack, the ability to add and remove gaps. You can get this Broncos team. I'm going to show 2 of the same plays, partly because we talked about it in the film room and we loved it. We talked about that blast motion from Alec Anderson that we started to see the past couple weeks and flirt a little bit, and how the Bills are running counter out of pistol with it. You get that here, not counter, it's power. But yep, you're going to get that blast motion from the tight end. Then you're going to get the guard coming behind him. So you are going to get the kick out block from technically your fullback here, Scott Matlock, who's aligned in more of an H. But essentially, this is just power with a blast motion, a different.
He's over 300 pounds, isn't he? So he is like an offensive lineman. He is like Anderson, honestly.
Yeah, he's a big dude. I love that aspect about the Chargers. Jim Harbaugh's commitment to just old school smash mouth football knows no bounds. And
totally his identity.
Yeah, absolutely. So blast motion, heavy personnel. Look at what you got. Let's watch Matlock come in. There you go. There's that blast motion. Who's he going for? He's going for Tillman.
Yeah.
Bang. Let's pop in. Here comes the pulling guard. Now, this all gets muddied a little bit, right? And so Dobbins does a good job reading this, adjusting his path. Gaps available. Set my man up. Bang. Gets downhill. Yep. And you will see this. I have 2 examples of it, this one and another, but you will see the Broncos defense, again, because of how stout they are, they'll do a good job kind of muddying this up a little bit, muddy up these gap runs, but there are lanes available. I mean, even, again, Malcolm Roach here, watch just what he does. Like, he takes on the center, and he's reading, okay, let me shed. I'm in this spot. Okay, he tries to shed again. Bang, let me pop back out here. But now he and Jones are in the same gap. There's the alley for Dobbins, and there he goes. I do think you can get this team with gap runs, particularly counter. We don't see the Bills do a lot of power. Who knows? Maybe they will. But anything to pull guys, if we're doing dart, if we're doing the tackle pull stuff, anything to add and remove gaps, I think that's the method of success against this defense.
Yeah, the Chargers did a great job with that against the Broncos D. The Ravens did. They use again, you see this play where that blast block there, blast motion, and then a backside puller. Yeah, the Bills don't pull their guards a lot, but they can do this with trap. They can use Anderson in the very same way. Last week against the Patriots, the Bills ran Gilliam on a lead where he was in a strong I formation. They pitched it out there, and he cleaned up the edge player. This is the type of stuff you're going to have to do because you want to get into that C gap. You want to get between the edge player, 92, and then the next defensive end down lineman right there. You want to get to that C gap right there. And so that you can kind of crease the edge of that defense. And so Bills did it with some pitches last week. To Ray Davis. Gilliam was kicking out Anthony Jennings of the Patriots. And so the thing that a lot of teams are doing against the Broncos, like you see here, is using some kind of lead blocker. Sometimes it's this extra, this fullback. Sometimes it's an offensive lineman. Sometimes it's just a true fullback. On lead plays against the Broncos defense, they're surrendering 4.8 yards per rush. It's the highest yards per attempt when you're talking run concepts. 82 attempts for 4.8 yards per rush. This is just an example of that. Again, there are variations to it. You saw the Seahawks use, I think actually we're going to break that play down. They used a tight end, right? They used a tight end, Noah Fant, to be that lead type of guy. That's what you want to do. I don't think the Bills will pull the guards to get to this. I think they will use their tackles, which again, that throws a wrinkle when it comes to the defensive side of the ball and their keys by pulling tackles on these type of plays.
Absolutely. And that's exactly where my head was at. Like, I don't think we're going to see this exact thing from the Bills. They're not out here pulling Edwards a ton. They're not going to really pull Torrance either, but it's this idea of adding and removing gaps, pulling your dudes. Could do it with the tackles, with how athletic they are. As I know you've talked about it a bunch, it's Reggie Gilliam season. So start to unleash Reggie Gilliam.
Yes.
This, and again, from a Bills perspective, we know they will, maybe not necessarily this piece, but what do we got here? Heavier personnel, condensed formation, reduced formational width, all of this, like some of this plays into the Bills' hand naturally a little bit, even though they don't have necessarily like a monster at fullback. Gilliam can get the job done as that sledgehammer as is evidenced by his Twitter handle and name.
Yes.
Here's another example, different little bit of a different presentation from the Seahawks, but you've got 2 tight ends. This time Fant is in line and is the other tight end who is hipped off. We're going to get the exact same idea again. We're going to get blast motion. So this tight end's coming across. He is taking out the edge. Then we're going to get the pull from the guard right here to lead it through. But again, just an example, add and remove gaps. You want to use some motion. You want to attack. This is where this Broncos defense can be had. That's a legitimate hole for Kenneth Walker to run through. And it's just the way that you see this repeatedly against the Broncos defense. When they get got, it's against these gap scheme runs and these lead runs, as you mentioned as well.
Yeah, you just want to get just off the hip of the tight ends, or in ghost tackles, or it's just something with the 5-man surface usually of the Broncos defense. That gap right there, man, that's where you want to hit, and so you want to kick a guy out, whether that's with the guard or like you see here, that tight end coming across the formation. I think the Bills are going to do this. I think Gilliam is going to be a huge part of this, as we see late in the year, every year. He plays a lot of snaps this time of the year, and I think they'll use Anderson in that boat. They're going to get creative, and it's going to be interesting to see how long they stay committed to it, because I do think that, again, that the Broncos defense, they're a stout unit, but if they can get to the edge and the perimeter of this defense, they will stay committed to it.
Yeah, and I wonder how much too the Bills, maybe do we see, some kind of spread, but to run it instead of, do they lean in and run the ball with the condensed looks, or do you go more spread to run the ball? And now we're tying in the Allen run game, Allen's legs. We know how much they love all the tackle pull stuff out of shotgun. Right. Like, is that how you're trying to remove gaps and kind of add them and attack that 5-man surface? I think there's multiple ways to do that. And honestly, too, obviously that involves the running backs, but another topic that we want to get into now, running backs in the pass game. I wanted to add in some, because there's clips of the Broncos literally getting got on mesh rail. And I was like, oh my God, the Bills run mesh rail like literally like every friggin' game. But the running backs are going to be an important piece of this game overall, but especially in the pass. The Broncos are 31st in DVOA against running backs. Yep. We talked about, I think actually the very first thing we ever talked about when Joe Brady took over for Dorsey was his ability to use the running backs in the pass game. So this is a big one to kind of,
but they weren't doing anything different than Dorsey. It's okay. It's all right. It's all right.
Man, I don't have time for people, but running backs in the pass game. Yeah. Let's talk about it.
I mean, like you said, 31st versus running backs in DVOA. They've surrendered. The Broncos defense has surrendered 85 completions, 651 yards, 6.4 yards per attempt, and 6 touchdowns to running backs alone. And we're going to show you a couple ways with some stats and film and how they did it. You just alluded to it. They give up a lot of wheel routes and a lot of flare routes. Wheel routes, they've surrendered 5 of 6 for 124 yards and 3 touchdowns. And flare routes, 37 for 42 for 231 yards and 1 touchdown. And so you're going to see a bunch of those plays right here. And of course, this is in the Bills offense. It's one of their main ways of attacking. It's one of the ways they've increased their yards after catch per reception, getting the ball to the running backs quickly on flare routes, whether they're like swings that turn in the rail or wheel routes, or just rail routes out of the backfield, which we'll show you here in a couple minutes. It's something that the Broncos just always surrender, because sometimes you're having that edge guy drop out. And again, he's not the most adept in coverage, and he gets out leverage, and that happens from time to time. So you're going to see running backs get leverage on the defense for big plays, especially if we're talking wheel routes, as you're going to see here in a minute. And the Bills, they generally like to attack with their wheel routes to running backs when it's man coverage. Usually when it's zone coverage, they're going to use the curl swing. So kind of like those flare routes and swing routes that you saw. They're going to use a curl by the number 1, and they'll swing the running back out and flare him out. And then if he doesn't get the ball, he'll wheel up the sideline. But the Bills got to get the ball to these running backs early and often, because, and I think that's the key to the game, because you want them early in the read so that they can do stuff, do something with it after the catch.
The one I debated putting in was the one to Justice Hill from the Ravens. So
we know that all too well, don't we?
Yeah, we feel
that happened to us.
Yeah, I would say it happened to the Bills. For that touchdown. I think for the 3rd touchdown of the game. Yeah, they're so vulnerable, I think, in this aspect. One, because, and you alluded to it, like that odd front 3-4 base, if they're dropping edge guys or if they're supposed to peel out with that running back leverage mismatch, that can be a problem. But then you pair that also with the linebacker position we talked about. Broncos eighth highest cover one rate on the year at 29%, seventh highest man coverage rate at 36.4, and then they're 15th in single high rate at 54.3. As we've seen in several of these clips for the Broncos, as we are seeing right now on this, what should have been a touchdown to James Cook, as we saw on the touchdown to Ray Davis against the Dolphins, if you're going to play man, your linebackers are most likely going to be that conflict player against mesh rail or slither or whatever type of running back design play out of the backfield like that the Bills love to hit. Your linebackers are going to have to cover. They have to be solid. They're going to be tested. And that is an area of the Broncos that is a vulnerability, and even more so in the coverage structure and scheme that they play and how they can be attacked and how easy it is for the Bills. Like, this is Brady's MO. Like, get the running backs involved in the pass game is, again, literally the thing we led with when we talked about the offensive coordinator change last year.
And I just love how they get to these, these wheel routes. So the Bills have completed 6 for 7 for 169 yards and 1 touchdown. But it should have been 7 for 7 and a touchdown with that James Cook drop. So they are very good on these wheel or rail routes. But why I find it so fascinating when it comes to these routes and route concepts is, yes, they're targeting the running backs, as you see Ty Johnson here, but they get to it from so many different ways.
Multiple presentations, personnel, formation, alignment. Yes.
Empty set here. He's the third receiver to the top of the screen, and they're setting a little rub, a little pick for him. He's running the wheel. Big play here. Again, against the Lions. That's the defense I think that most resembles the team we're going to see this coming week.
And we talked about that one too. They ran that against the Texans. It didn't work because Knox didn't hit his right depth. They course corrected, fixed it, and it worked on that play against the Lions that we saw.
So here's another wheel or rail. Ty Johnson in the backfield, sneaks out the backfield against a linebacker, right? Cover again, that man coverage beater, getting the matchup of running back on linebacker. A really nice dime here from Josh. So you could see the different ways that the Bills got to it. Here, they're much like that last play. They snuck Cook out through that B or C gap. Unfortunately, he drops it here. This is that curl wheel. So usually when it's zone, say it's cover 3, it's a single high cover 3 look, you're having the number 1 kind of set a little rub here and a curl, and then you're just swinging it. It's not immediately turning it into that wheel route like you see here, but you see James Cook look up ahead and say, oh, man, I have some green, and then he turns it upfield. So there'll be some ways for them to attack these single high coverages that the Broncos play, whether it's cover 1 or cover 3, because they do play cover 3 a lot. Man or zone, they will have these wheel routes and these flare routes to their running backs in the playbook, in the strategy this week. If they don't, they're not doing their job.
Completely agree. And for a team like the Broncos who can pressure the quarterback, ideally want to and will pressure the quarterback, again, they're second in blitz rate. They make your running backs work in terms of pass protecting, in terms of supporting the quarterback, playing that role. I wonder if this is a big Ty Johnson game in some way because he is their best pass protector, but also he can function in this way in a multitude of spots. So if you want to keep him in and pass protect, cool. If you want to send him out on the swing or the wheel, or let's shift him and put him as that number 3 and go 3-by-2 and then have him out there. I think that's like a nice, fun little wrinkle for James Cook. Has had a phenomenal year.
Yeah.
And honestly should have been a straight up Pro Bowler, even though I don't care about the Pro Bowl at all. And Erik, I'm sure you don't either, but this could end up being a big Ty Johnson game because of what he is as a pass protector, his value as a receiver and runner at the same time. Either way, these running backs should eat because of the matchup, because of the position group at linebacker for the Broncos, and then how adept Brady is at just scheming up these running backs all the time.
And again, it has to be early in the play. They have to be a primary read. I mean, just listen to some of these numbers. Okay, Ty Johnson, 284 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. You're having James Cook with 258 receiving yards. You have Ray Davis with 189. And so Ty Johnson, 3 touchdowns. James Cook, 2 touchdowns receiving. Ray Davis, 3 touchdowns receiving. But more importantly, the air yards per target for guys like Ray Davis is 0.84. Early, right? You're getting it to him early. That play against, was it the Patriots? No, who was that against when he ran that for the touchdown? Oh, Dolphins,
63-yarder, right? Miami. Allen gets it to him right away because he's
quickly,
the primary on mesh rail.
Yeah.
Miami blows it and Allen hits it to him. It just happens to end up going for a huge house call.
0.84 air yards per target on his reception. James Cook, 0.97 air yards per target on his targets. So getting the ball into the hands of the running backs quickly on those flares, on those swings, on those wheel routes up the sideline, that is the area the Bills have to attack. I think that is the key to the entire passing game. Make them respect that. And if they start doing that and they start just hammering that, the defense has to change, because it's very difficult to defend the running back position and focus on a running back position. It changes a lot of things, and that's how you can really disrupt the game plan of the Broncos.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah, taking advantage of the flats and then the middle of the field and putting everybody on that second level under stress, ideally away from whatever side Pat Surtain is on.
Yeah, Surtain, yeah.
And go to the other side and just do that.
No, you go that way.
Yeah. Nice. Nice. Yeah. And I really think that's the key to this game, starting with the run is going to matter so much for the Bills in this game. And I think it will for every game, but just the running backs in general, for as much as Surtain is all world. And I feel like the conversation for folks is, Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman or Dalton Kincaid. Give me the running backs. Give me 6 targets for James Cook and like 4 for Ty Johnson and 2 or 3 for Ray Davis. And we talked about it with the checkdowns in terms of, and that's a great point that you put into the chat. Yeah, they're number 1 in DVOA against tight ends, which is, again, you juxtapose that with being 31st against running backs.
Yep.
That ability to get the ball and spit it out to them quickly, similar to how we talked about with checkdowns and stuff, right? You check it down while the defense is still getting into their drop. With these ones, they're like quick hitters against man coverage, or with that curl swing we've seen them hit over and over again. That zone coverage isn't yet there. You are out leveraged, you are out spaced, and football at its core is about numbers, angles, and space and leverage. And we've seen the Bills time and time again take advantage of defenses with this type of mode of attack, and it really just feels like it has to be the go-to against Denver.
Yeah, it's got to start there. And Adam asked, on a scale of 1 to 10, how scared are we of this matchup? It's a good way to kind of wrap up this entire scouting breakdown. And again, it's a single elimination game, so of course there is some anxiety from me personally when it comes to this game. And again, it's about matchups. It is always about matchups, and everything on paper screams that the Bills should probably run away with this. But when you break down and you look at the micro, like we just did for the last hour and a half, you can see where there are opportunities for the Broncos to come in and steal this game. All right. There are matchups that they can exploit just as much as the Bills can exploit on them as well. So I do think that there is an opportunity. There is an avenue where the Broncos could come in and you really slow down the Bills offense, because there have been times where these type of schemes have given the Bills offense issues, especially if we're talking like the defensive front versus the Bills offensive front. So I think there are opportunities. Do I think the Bills win? Yes, I do. But I do think that there are going to be some growing pains. And you know what it's going to come down to, as it usually does, is who's adjusting quicker. Who's adjusting quicker at the same time? Who is, obviously scoring points. That's the obvious. But protecting the ball, not giving possessions, not giving points, in opportunities and ways that you hadn't all year. Again, Josh, don't turn it over. Play it safe with the ball. Take your shots when needed in high leverage situations, but play your game like you have all year. Nothing's changed. You've heard them all day today talk about that. Like, hey, this is who we are. We're not going to change. It's not what got us here. Yeah, you're not wrong. So stick to that. Don't give them special teams points. Don't give them turnovers, short fields to a rookie quarterback, points to a defense. Make them earn everything on the road.
Yeah, if I'm doing scale of 1 to 10, I'm going to say like a 6.5, because I can see the plan. Again, we dove into a ton of Broncos tape over these past several days. I do think the Broncos have a blueprint. I hate using that phrase, but of how to have success against the Bills. I don't think offensively they have enough from the personnel and the roster to threaten the Bills enough. If defensively, I think it's a different story with what they have up front and on the back end, not even just Pat, what they have. I just don't think they have the horses from a weapons standpoint. Tight end,
right?
Some fun pieces at receiver, but not necessarily holistic and complete. Some questions with the running backs and how much meat they leave on the bone with the run, like we talked about. Nix has been fine. Sean Payton is tremendous. This offensive line is good. but I think they're deficient in certain areas that doesn't allow them to fully maximize the kind of mismatch that could be created or the vulnerabilities that they could attack. So yeah, I'm going to go with like a 6.5. I do think the Bills should win this game, but I wouldn't be holistically shocked if it's close or if it's a slog or if somehow Denver wins this game, because they do have a realistic path to kind of winning.
Yeah, Bo Nix and the offense has put up, what I think Joe Marino posted some about 30 plus points in the last 7 games. I don't think that's by accident. I think he's settled in. And I think Sean Payton and that staff are doing a great job of getting him in those positions to succeed. And so if that defense, if the Broncos defense can minimize Josh Allen, if they can stymie and slow down pretty much Michael Jordan, if they can slow him down just enough to keep it close defensively, then Bo Nix and that script and their ideal script of possessing the ball but still getting points at the end, because they do get a lot of drives. They're one of the top teams when we talk about drives per game, and again, that's because of the defense.
Yeah,
and so and their special teams giving them good field positions. There are avenues there, guys. There are avenues there. We're not trying to fear monger, but this is what you guys come to the film room for. We just broke it down for over an hour and a half. We got into a lot of the X's and O's, scheme, advanced metrics. This was a lot of work, Anthony, but again, this is the stuff I love. I love being a pretend scout, being a pro scout and getting to watch all this film and, basically attack this episode like we are a coach and a scout and what we need to do as an offense or defense to exploit the matchups, because again, it's a matchup league and there are avenues for the Broncos to win some matchups.
Yeah, these are my favorite episodes to do. And one of these days, we should just show like all the charting we do for like film in general, but then like these episodes, like it's just so much goes into it, but it's awesome and it's so fun and it gets you in tune even more so with an opponent and just football in general. I'm excited for this matchup. I was excited for this episode. It was nice to see how well it was received from a lot of people in the chat. And it was fun to kind of put this together. I think this is sneakily, I think, one of the best matchups of the wild card weekend. Like there's different games that have different, I don't want to say narratives, storylines attached to them, and certain matchups in certain ways from like a narrative type of perspective. I'll put it there. But I think from a schematic X's and O standpoint, this game can get really fun, man, especially with Bills offense versus Broncos defense. And I'm going to say this out loud to kind of make it work as an anti-jinx. I fear that game of like Allen turns it over early and it's close and it's muddy and Allen thinks he has to do too much and he's trying to throw, the corner route with Pat in a cloud coverage in cover 2 to the short side and it gets intercepted, or trying to fit the whole shot that he doesn't need to fit a whole shot with. I worry about that because we haven't seen that guy this year.
I know.
And I'm just worried it would be so I'm going to say this because I'm trying to make it not happen. It would be so Billsy for that guy to show up like in this game and things to potentially go sideways. But the good news is you do have a good run game. If you're the Bills, you have a good offensive line. You have a good offensive coordinator. You have a very good offensive line coach. There are pivots. So it's not just on Josh Allen, even though the Broncos can potentially try and make him put on the cape and make him have to be a mutant alien unicorn to get it done. It's going to be a fun one. It's a fun weekend. It's a fun time. Erik, as we start to say goodbye to the folks here, anything you got that you want to close with?
No, thanks, to everyone that tuned in live with us. And I know it's a lengthy episode. It's pretty in depth. And I know a lot of you guys don't have all the time to watch it all in one sitting. It's all right. Go back and watch it. You got a few days to go back and watch it. We're, obviously a brand and show that loves to dive into the X's and O's of it, but not just from a film standpoint, but we use a lot of advanced metrics and a lot of the telestrator stuff, a lot of the memberships, a lot of the film you see, a lot of that wouldn't be possible without you guys being here live, without you guys watching on YouTube, but also our insiders that, subscribe to our content, that are in our Discord channel. So if you guys want this type of content all year round, every single day, 24/7, on top of entertaining channels in Discord, we have film channels, we have analytics, fantasy, all that stuff in our Discord server. You just got to become an insider and subscribe to our premium content at cover1.football. But we wouldn't be able to do any of this without you guys. Once again, thank you for tuning in. I'm spent, Ant. That was a fun
Bro.
episode, dude. That was so much fun.
Yeah, I'm so tired between disguise covers last night and then this, but it was fun. Like, the prep work was awesome. It's nice to kind of put this in the can. I'm pumped for playoff weekend. And yeah, just kind of piggyback on what you said. I always feel like when the regular season, we do this towards the end of the year, the actual calendar year, but then as the regular season ends, we go into the playoffs and off season. Just the overwhelming support that we get consistently, and whatever form or fashion it comes in from you folks. If it's a like on this video or any video, which goes a long way to help us track and trend in front of more eyes and ears, or if it's a rating or a review or turning on playlist notification, or if you are an insider, or if you told somebody one time, like, oh, you like the Bills, you should check out Cover One, or like, oh, you like football, but you're a fan of this other team, you should watch Cover One, or yada, yada. Or if you're somebody, I forget who it was, and forgive me if they happen to watch, someone shouted out you and I from the Broncos side of things for how awesome our timelines have been for diving into the Broncos, Strickland or something, which was awesome. Like, just the amount of support that comes our way, and as a brand and as this show, it's awesome. And we greatly appreciate every single ounce of it, whatever form or fashion it comes in. So again, thank you to all you folks. Thank you, Carl, to you for that super chat. I guess also technically thank you to Greg for his super chat earlier and trying to bait me with the snatch trap piece, but it's all appreciated. Yeah. It's all love. That'll do it for us here in this episode of the Cover One Film Room. If you're here on YouTube watching now live now or watching later, please drop a like on this video, turn on notifications for the Cover One. I like that from Mr. Yeah, if you breathe, watch Cover One. That I can't say anything better than that. Yeah. That's what should be the brand slogan. Like, if you breathe, watch Cover One. There's no response to that, because everyone's like, well, I breathe. Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good tagline. Yeah, if that was so good, it got me off my train of thought. Yeah, if you're watching here on YouTube live or later post live, please drop a like on this video, turn on notifications for the Cover One Film Room playlist, subscribe to the Cover One channel, where we have you covered pretty much every single day of the week with various levels of Bills content. That does not stop come the off season, the entirety of the off season. We will still have you covered in whatever form or fashion you need. If you're listening on one of the podcasting apps or platforms, that's cool too. Please rate and review and subscribe. Tell your family and friends and loved ones about the brand, about the show, about the channel. If you want the social work, not social work like that, but work that gets put onto social. We do a lot more advanced metrics and film and a bunch of, if we did posted all this stuff, if we did everything in the film room that we post on social, each film room episode would legit probably be like 5 hours each week, minimum. So if you want more content about this matchup, football in general, the Bills, catch Erik he runs that Cover One handle. So at Cover and the number one. His personal is at Erik J. Turner. You can find me on Twitter at @pro__Ant. If you happen to be on Blue Sky, I post the same things that I do on Twitter to there at @pro_Ant, no underscore there. Get at us on social with whatever you got. We greatly appreciate you folks for tuning into this episode. If you're going to the game this week, have a great time. Be safe. And in general, we hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well and staying safe. Be kind to one another. Take care of one another. I'm Anthony Prohaska. That's Erik Turner. That'll do it for us here in the film room. Godspeed. And as always, go Bills.